Kamusta? Mabuhay, magandang gabi, and maligayang pagbabalik sa Music Game News! Ako po si Ovela, I am your host Ovela, and I have reacted in the past to Toni Gonzaga's interview, and that is exactly why you guys are asking me to react to this video. Okay, and the title of it is The Greatest Lesson Bongbong. Man, what a name! I mean, seriously, is that his first name, Bongbong? It sounds like bonbon, you know, and bonbon in French is candy. Bongbong. And bong in English is the thing you smoke weed out of, if I'm not mistaken, right? I personally don't smoke weed, so I'm not sure. So yeah, the greatest lesson Bongbong Marcos learned from his father, all right? And when these people sent me this suggestion, it's when I saw the last name Marcos that I got interested. I was like, wait a minute, that name sounds familiar. And it does sound familiar because I've reacted in the past to a video that explains Marcos Gold, I think, and the Marcoses, if I'm remembering things correctly, are part of the wealthiest families in the Philippines and stuff like that. So yeah, this interview sounds very interesting, and I like the way Toni Gonzaga also interviews people. But obviously, before we start, we have to read a little bit about Bongbong Marcos because I honestly don't know who he is, all right? But before we start all of that, please consider following me on Instagram at Music Game News. And now we can start learning a little bit about Bongbong Marcos. All right. Let me start this thing right here so that you guys can see it as well. Ferdinand Bongbong Romualdez Marcos Jr. Okay, so Bongbong is not actually his name, it's probably his nickname. His first name is Ferdinand Romualdez Marcos Jr. Born September 13, 1957, also known by his initials BBM. BBM is a Filipino politician who most recently served as a senator from 2010 to 2016, so 6 years, all right. He is the second child and only son of former president dictator, yikes, and kleptocrat Ferdinand Marcos. What does kleptocrat mean? I don't know. And former First Lady Imelda Romualdez Marcos. In 1980, the 23-year-old Bongbong Marcos became vice governor of Ilocos Norte, running unopposed under the Kilusang Bagong Lipunan party of his father, who still ruled the Philippines under martial law at the time. He then became governor of Ilocos Norte in 1983, holding that office until his family was ousted from power by the People Power Revolution and fled into exile in Hawaii in February 1986. Wow, this is super interesting. So yeah, he is the son of a dictator, so that's never a good thing. The people had to take matters into their own hands and, like they said, you know, basically remove the dictator from his, you know, position of power. After the death of his father Ferdinand Marcos in 1989, so hey, I was born before he died. Okay, I was 2 years old. President Corazon Aquino eventually allowed the remaining members of the Marcos family, including Bongbong, to return to the Philippines in order to face various charges. Yikes. Eventually, Bongbong ran for and was elected governor of Ilocos Norte again in 1998. Wow. Okay. I wonder what happened there. So I guess the people were not against the son and they were more upset with the father, right? Later on, he was elected as representative of the 2nd District of Ilocos Norte from 1992 to 1995, so 3 years, and again from 2007 to 2010, 3 years again. In 2010, Marcos was elected as Senator of the Philippines under the Nacionalista Party. In 2015, Marcos ran for Vice President of the Philippines. Wow! In the 2016 election, with a difference of 263 and 473,000 votes, 0.64% difference, Marcos lost to Leni Robredo. Oh, okay. In response, Marcos filed an electoral protest at the Presidential Electoral Tribunal. In 2021, Marcos' petition was unanimously dismissed after the pilot recount of the chosen provinces of Negros Oriental, Iloilo, and Camarines Sur, which resulted in Robredo widening her lead even more by 15,093 additional votes. Okay, well, there you go. This represents pretty well the person of Bongbong Marcos. Now we can get into the actual interview, so let's do it. Toni Gonzaga. Bongbong Marcos.
Today, I'm with a man who needs no introduction.
He does.
We have with us the one and only Mr. Bongbong Marcos.
She is clearly talking to her Filipino audience, but foreigners definitely need an introduction.
Hello. So happy to be here.
Thank you very much.
No, I thank you for taking the trouble. Thank you.
Thank you very much for allowing us into your beautiful home. Do you have a favorite part here in your house?
Well, having grown up as a student, I got used to living in one room. So I have my desk in my bedroom. So I basically spend most of my time when I'm in the house.
Yourself?
I was in there for 72 days.
In your room?
In the room.
What were you
72
doing inside
days?
the room?
Driving myself crazy, basically.
What?
When
Bro.
you're ill, you don't really mind the passage of time. So
Oh, he got sick? Was it, are they talking about the pandemic? Did he get the COVID?
You're talking about the time when you got COVID.
Oh,
Yeah, when I got
shit.
COVID, so-
Okay, well, he looks much better now, thankfully.
if you're not feeling bad, you don't really worry about it. I knew
72 days, bro. That's more than 2 months.
I was better because I was getting very bored and just think, when can I get out of here? When can I get out of here?
Do you have a morning routine po? Sir Bongbong?
Well, yeah.
Like what time do you usually wake up?
I'm usually up by 7, but after cleaning my teeth, I go straight to the computer and look messages and answer my mail and see what's happening, what I missed from the night before.
So hindi kayo nagbe-breakfast, Sir Bong?
I fast
Is that the intermittent
in
fasting?
the intermittent
Oh,
fasting.
very
It seems to
nice.
work for me. Sometimes I forget that I fasted and haven't eaten, and I'll go and exercise.
What's your exercise po?
Gym.
Do you guys do intermittent fasting? I hear it's pretty efficient, you know. I do Ramadan once a year, so, 30 days. We don't eat from the moment the sun goes up till the sun goes down, right? But I've never really done intermittent fasting. Maybe I should do that. That sounds interesting.
Because my schedule's so crazy, I can't do it like before. So that's what I do now. Just to have to stay fit, especially after COVID. It's my father's influence. My father was, before the term was invented,
The
he was
dictator.
a health freak. And he would exercise at least an hour a day, sometimes
Damn,
twice a
son!
So you would see him exercise when you were
day. He would make
regularly?
He would bring us to the gym. He said, "Come," when we were little.
Since you talked about your father, when you were born,
So I'm guessing you guys are interested in this specific interview because you are fascinated by the Marcos family, right? And I'm guessing he's gonna divulge and reveal some, some stories, some interesting stories about his family and everything, right?
he was already in politics.
Yes. He became congressman in 47, and then senator in 57.
That's the time you were born.
That's the year I was born. Yeah. Actually, I think he was always in politics, at least in his mind. When I became governor of Ilocos Norte, I got to talk. Since I was spending all my time there, I got to talk to some of his friends and the people who were around him when he was still living in Ilocos. And they said, 16 years old pa lang yan, may kabinete na yan.
Ah, really?
Oo. Talagang my father is one of those, I suppose, the most single-minded person I've ever known. If it had nothing to do with his work, he just wouldn't spend time on it.
Saan po kayo pinanganak?
San Juan. No,
San Juan.
pinanganak ako doon. So we lived in our house, which is still there, until 1965, when he won the presidency and we moved na to the palace.
He won his presidency in 1965. You were 7 years
Yeah,
old.
because I remember my first birthday in the palace was my 8th birthday.
What was that like?
Oh, it's amazing because my dad brought me to school. He woke me up. He came into my room. I was changing, going ready to go to school. And he said, "Come, it's your birthday, I'll bring you." So he brought me. And I cannot forget, and my classmates cannot forget, there were those two yung ice cream. Nagdebenta ng sorbetes, Magnolia, and then Selecta pa nun, hindi ba?
Yes.
So, dalawa sila. So my dad made it Pacquiao. He said, we paid them some money, and he said, lahat ng hihingi ng ice cream, libre
cool.
At habong araw, kasi birthday ng anak ko. So I was the most popular guy.
Anong school po kayo pumapasok
Lasal
nun?
Green Hills. In Ortigas, yeah.
So at 8 years old, you already lived in the palace. What was that like, growing up in Malacanang, in the palace?
Malacanang.
Well, in the early days, masaya kasi ang daming...
Kaya, daming...
Whoa. Oh, okay. Oh, I thought the child in the middle was him. No, he's on the right. I was like, why is a boy dressed as a girl, right? But no. Okay.
Rooms, ang laki.
Ang daming pupuntahan, ang daming mong... You go down to the kitchen, you mess around with the cooks, and then you go to the CQ, you mess around with them, you play with them, you go to the park. So there's many places to go.
Anong favorite place niyo nun sa Malacanang?
I used to end up hanging out with the CQ all the time. I guess with the guys, you know.
With
the
the
palace
dudes.
was so interesting. But as the time went on, the private part of the palace became smaller and smaller, and the office part of the palace became bigger and bigger.
Wow.
That was at one time.
That was gorgeous.
And the office part of the palace became
Look at this part. That is gorgeous. Wow, look at those huge, humongous chandeliers in the middle. Oh.
bigger and
That
bigger.
carpet?
It was at one time that I came out in my pajamas. And my father was approaching with a state visitor. So I said, okay, that's not happening again. You do not leave your room until you're
Fully
completely
dressed.
ready to see people.
How was your relationship with your father?
With my
nung
dad?
time na yun? Was he a disciplinarian? Was he strict with
Yeah,
you?
he was. His only thing was study hard. Yun lang talaga. Basta work hard, study hard. That was his main thing. As long as you're studying hard, you're okay with him.
You got a lot of his traits. Kasi nga, di ba, you grew up watching him sa stage, giving speeches. So, marami sa mannerisms niya. Even yung size niya, nakuha niyo.
Yeah,
Yung
ang
waist.
katawan namin is remarkably similar. From shoe size to waist, everything. That's why I was one of the lucky ones that when binibigyan siya ng...
Exactly like my dad and my brother. We all have the same body type. And you know the app that makes you look older? I did that and it made me look exactly like my dad. It's actually frightening.
ng regalo, no, I would raid his closet. My mannerisms, especially speaking, is very much my dad's. But syempre, from the time I was very small, we were already there in the back watching him make speeches.
Of course.
And he would teach a little bit about modulation and everything, but voice modulation and things like that. But mostly, what he would insist upon when we started having to speak was that learn it, don't read. The thing that's also that everybody says is my voice, is that we have the same voice.
Di ba po when your dad was a president, sinasama niya kayo sa lahat ng kanyang mga visits in different parts of the world, and you have met some of the most powerful and influential people. You have met the royal family.
Yes. Some of the funnest parts would be my mom would call and says, I'm going to meet Generalissimo Franco in Spain. You want to come? Of course. Get out of school, number one, di ba? And we'd go. I'm going to see the Pope. Sama ka. Sama kami.
Wow.
I think it was a conscious effort of my parents to expose us. Because even the travel, like they would go to the provinces or they would go to, especially yung mga Baguio, yung mga ganon. Sinasama lagi kami. We were always there. So I think it was my parents that they really wanted us to see everything.
Sino po yung na-meet nyo that made a huge impact in your life na hindi nyo makakalimutan?
Madami masyado. I've met most of the popes. I've met most of the secretary generals of the UN. In fact, I've met
Kofi Annan.
youth aunt. Si Indira Gandhi was one who really impressed me, and Maggie Thatcher.
What do you think is the
Wow.
greatest lesson that you've learned from your father?
Oh my!
See, she asks him a lot of questions about his father because, okay, I don't know the exact story behind his father, but you know, usually and generally, the term dictator, you know, is not seen as a positive word, right? Like dictatorship is always bad. So I'm guessing his father was not the best president.
I learned so much from him. It's hard to. When it comes to work, marami siyang, you know, like things like when you walk into a room, the guy, if you're walking to a negotiation, whoever knows more wins. So I've always held that. Always work hard. Hard work is always rewarded. Things like that. He was not the type to sit you down and say, ano mo, anak, ang ganito, ganyan. Hindi, basta say, ito yung gagawin natin. He would be with his cabinet members, and they would be talking about something pretty important. And he would suddenly turn to me, what do you think?
Oh, really?
Like,
Ilan taong kayo?
I was 16, 17. He was already turning to me and saying, what?
Very good. He was trying to include his son into like important matters. You know, he was basically teaching him at a very young age. He was prepping him.
What do you think? But you know, when he asks you a question, it's not because he wants to know the answer. He wants to know if you know the answer. He's testing you.
Yeah.
Kasi inaral na niya yan, alam na niya yan. So come prepared.
From your mother naman po.
From my mother, well, of course, it's the certain things. My love of music, of the arts, because she's our house.
See, Filipinos and music. It goes up to the, to the, you know, if you will, the White House. I don't know how you guys call it. I think they mentioned it, right? But I can't. I forgot the name of it. But even the president, you know, or the son of the president loves music. It's in your blood. It's in your genes.
Always had music playing. She was the one who used to take us to the theater.
She was pretty.
It really was her point of joy. Really was the art. Were the arts. It wasn't normal. You didn't have a norm. There wasn't such a thing as a normal day.
What the hell was that? The Queen
The arts.
of England?
It wasn't
Yeah.
normal.
Wow,
You didn't
she
have a
was
There
young.
wasn't such a thing as a normal day. Every day was different. What formed
Queen Elizabeth.
the way I do things is how my father or my mother would react. It's having watched both of them handling the problems that they were confronted with on a daily basis. I think that's what really made my own personality when it came to such things. I would say that the many incidents that I watched them handle really taught me how to approach problems, how to take the challenges that inevitably come up.
I wonder why Toni is interviewing Bongbong Marcos right now. Is there a reason for it? Is he maybe making a move in the political Filipino world?
Speaking of yung handling life situations and problems when people were marching towards EDSA,
How did your father handle that situation?
My father called me and he said, we have intelligence that this is about these people are moving and this is what they're going to do. I'm assigning you to work with the security to handle the defense of the palace. So that's from that day on, that's all I was doing. From that point, that Wednesday afternoon, naka-uniforme na ako eh. Because I just come out of the military also at the time. Kaya ako linagay, sabi niya, ikaw ang in charge sa defense ng palasyo.
how was your father nung time po na yun?
so he reverted back to his commander mode, wartime commander mode. Again, very calm, very measured.
So, nung nangyayari po yung rally sa EDSA, ano yung sinabi niya sa inyo?
I remember saying, yung kalaban, sabi, ginigera na tayo. And he answered
That
me.
must have been scary.
He said, I have spent my whole life defending Filipinos. I cannot hurt them now. That was it. Baba, put your guns down. Say, we're not shooting anyone.
Wow. Marcos flees.
Were
There you go.
scared
Yeah.
nung time na yun?
No, I wasn't. I can't say as I was. Because militarily, we had an advantage. It's just he chose not to fight. And then they took us to Clark. When we got to Clark, dinisarmahan kami. Lilipad na kami sa Guam. Which is what happened.
How was your father when you were in Guam?
He was ill. He wasn't well. He wasn't sleeping. But again, he was still his old self. He was in that mode. He was in commander mode.
Was there ever a time that he showed his vulnerability to you?
He's a professional, so basta kung anong kailangan gawin natin. He didn't shirk away from any kind of challenge. Basta kung ano, hinaharap niya talaga. Basta the opposite of vulnerable.
Solution-based.
Oh, absolutely. Mission-oriented ang tawag sa military. Mission-oriented.
How was your last moments with your father?
Before he passed away.
They called us. I was in San Francisco, and the doctors started calling, and actually my sister said, "You better come back." So I rushed, took the first plane back to Hawaii, and that's it. And he had a kind of a seizure. His heart failed. And we were just watching and trying to revive him.
Wow.
But
That's tough.
he didn't make it. And I remember I was hugging Irene, and we were looking, because we were asked to leave the room while the doctors attended to him. So we were watching him through the window.
What was his last words with you na tumatak sa inyo talaga
Good question.
before he passed away?
I remember just before he died, he opened his eyes and he just looked at me. And you're gonna make me cry.
Yeah.
He just looked at me, and he closed his eyes again, and all the alarms went off. All the machines started beeping, and then all the nurses came in, all the doctors came in. We were hustled out of the room, and that was it. So there were no last words, but
There was that last look.
there was that last look that I will never forget. And God, look what you're doing.
She
People
knows
will
what
think I'm a
she's
crime.
doing.
It meant the world, that last look.
It's a very
She's pulling on those heartstrings, man. That question is really tough.
very sad memory.
Yeah.
And sad and happy at the same time, because at least meron siyang last na connection with me, with us. I could see he really looked, and he knew who I was, and he knew that perhaps he was going.
Parang
So,
that look was a farewell.
parang ganun.
And the piano behind really doesn't help.
A lot of people were saying that your father, Ferdinand Marcos, was the best president the Philippines has ever had.
Really?
And to some people, he was
Dictator.
the worst
There you
president
go.
the
So-
Philippines has ever had. But if I were to ask you, what's the best and worst thing about him?
Good
The best thing
question.
about him, as a
This is why I enjoy watching Toni Gonzaga's interviews, man. She has very nice questions.
leader, as a president, he was an actual leader. I think the problem now we have is that we lack leadership. You cannot be president following surveys, which is a tendency that we have not only here but in other countries as well. Meron siyang vision talaga. I want the Philippines to be this place in 10 years. I will make the Philippines this good by that year. Meron siyang
And
vision.
did he?
Ano yung galing ng Pinoy? Yun, doon tayo. Pagandahin natin.
Did his
He had a
vision
very
come to
clear
fruition?
understanding of what needed to be done and how to do it. And that, I think, was his best quality as a leader, which was born of his experience, born of his smarts, born of his love for the Filipinos and Philippines. The worst, I don't know how you would describe, because he had all the qualities of a good leader that a good leader would have, should have rather. He took any job that he had very, very, very serious. A very serious person. And that sense of focus, maybe that's the worst, because everything was put aside. If it does not help the presidency, it does not help the country. If it is not in the national interest, you keep it to yourself.
So basically, his best quality is also his worst quality.
I don't have time for that. That's all I have to do. Not to say that he was a negligent father, but he was always very doting with us. But that was his life. That was everything that he was about. Worst in the sense, kasi kami, mga anak na, we wish we could spend more time with him. And so, ano ba, we never see him anymore. Actually, my mom, the same thing. They were always out doing something, even when we'd come home from when we were going to school abroad already. Pag uwi namin, so umuwi pa tayo, we don't naman see our parents. But that was the kulang part in our, because they were just so busy. There was just so much to do and so many things to.
How do you handle po, Sir Bong, yung mga criticisms, yung mga bashers, yung mga hate sa anti-Marcos?
Well, we're in political life. Find me a person in political life who has no critic, who has no hater, who has no bashers, who has no critic. And you can't find one. Nobody won an election with 100% of the vote. No one.
Good point.
Ever, anywhere, unless they cheated.
Yeah.
So that's something that we learned to live with very, because I remember very well when he was Senate President. I remember being in Baguio for some reason, and every day the newspaper would be oust Marcos, oust Marcos. Basta binabanatan siya ng gusto. I'm talking young. I was quite young.
Ilang taon po kayo nun?
I must have been 6 years old.
So
Because
at 6 pa lang,
nababasa na ako eh. You could read already. So,
and you would get affected nung time na yun, syempre.
hindi ko maintindihan, ba't galit sila sa daddy ko? Ba't galit na galit sila? Siyempre, babasahin ko yung diary, hindi ko naman naintindihan kung ano yung pinag-uusapan nila. So I remember asking an aunt, saying, ba't ganun? Ba't sila galit kay daddy? Bait naman si daddy. Hindi, ganyan talaga.
And to this day, Sir Bong,
kaya nga,
the mere surname, merong mga talagang pag narinig, Marcos. But your father po, how did he handle that? Yung mga Aus, Marcos, yung mga critic?
Trabaho lang tatay ko, trabaho lang. That's nothing.
You just
I've been called worse names. I've been called every name in the book. If you're making your enemies angry, you're doing a good job. And we go back to Churchill. If you haven't made any enemies, you haven't done anything. Ganyan talaga. Ang buhay ng politika eh. Wala ka talaga. Hindi mo maiwasan yan eh. Kahit yung pinaka-popular. Tignan mo, our president now.
I'm in a pretty good position. I can relate because of my honesty. I've made a lot of enemies. I mean, in my case, it's not enemies. It's just people that bash me, right? And that just leave hateful comments, trolls, right? So I can relate.
If you look at the surveys, ang taas-taas ng popularity, ng approval rating at lahat, meron pa rin galit sa kanya, meron pang minumura siya, meron pang kung ano-ano sinasabi. Hindi mo mawala yan eh. And we learned that lesson I did anyway. I learned that lesson very early on.
Yeah.
At the age of 6.
Mga ganun. I remember. We'll look in the history books. When was the time when he was Senate President? Ang gusto talaga siyang tanggalin. They just kept attacking him and attacking him. I remember. I still in my head. I can still see the newspaper oust Marcos, Marcos out. Yung ganun, puro ganun yung headline.
At the age of 6, parang ang aga kagad na awakening yun and realization about life. Di ba?
It had to happen because buhay talaga namin yun. It's been that way since
History.
before we were born.
Yes.
Di ba?
Speaking of history, Sir Bong, if you were to change one thing about the Philippine history, what would you change?
The colonizations,
Of course.
sana hindi na tayo na-colonize. I would do away with the Spanish colonization, with the 300 years. And all the Americans essentially colonized us.
Yep.
And I think that Filipinos deserve better than to be second-class citizens.
Your mom has been very vocal about you following the footsteps of your father, hindi ba? So, where do you see yourself next year?
As long as I'm functioning, I consider myself to be in public service. I hew close to my father's idea that it seems we were put on this earth to serve, and so that's what I'll do. If that is my purpose in life, and that's what God wants for me to do, then that's what I will continue to do.
He kept it very broad, no specifics.
I'm functioning. It's never finished kasi. It's never finished.
Is he gonna follow in the footsteps of his father?
There's always one other thing that
Minus the dictatorship, of course.
you can do. There's always a little bit more that you can do.
So, if it's not yet finished, what is it po that you want to continue doing?
Helping, just make the Philippines better. Well, right now, to be specific, is we're in the middle of this crisis. We have to improve our vaccination rollout.
Yes.
Because it seems to be the only solution. In the very beginning of the pandemic, I was trying to find a way that you could balance opening the economy and staying safe. With the vaccines coming, what really needs to be done now is to have a plan for the re-emerging Philippine economy. What do we do? Paano natin bubuhayin ulit yung mga nalugi?
In the eyes of public, you have lived a privileged life. And parang iniisip nila, you seem to have everything. If there's one thing that you think that you don't have, ano po yun?
I agree with that public perception. Well, in the earlier part of my life, the privileges we enjoyed, we grew up in comfort. We had never needed for anything. What is it that's kulang pa in my...
You think that you don't have because you seem to have everything.
I'm jealous of you. I wanted to be a musician.
Sabi nga po ng anak nyo, if you weren't in politics,
Oh.
rockstar nga daw po kayo.
Ay, yun. Dalawa lang ang ambisyon ko nung maliit. When I was about 12 years old, maging rockstar, maging astronaut.
Sino idol yung rockstar nun?
Stones.
Hey!
Well, the Beatles, all of them. I became friends with all of them eventually.
What?
No,
Oh
nakilala
my
ko sila
god, this guy keeps flexing his muscles. I met the Pope. I met this and that. I was friends with the Beatles and the other bands. Are you freaking kidding me, man? Yeah, he lived in comforts, that's for sure. Goodness gracious.
Siyempre, all this,
If you were to introduce the name Marcos to the new generation, how would you introduce yourself to them?
Well, I'm the son of the longest-lasting president who brought the Philippines into the modern world, really, and we became who brought to the Philippines a sense of nationhood. I've been asked many times, what's the most important part of your father's legacy? I'd say the most important part is that sense of nationhood. When we were proud to be Filipino, when we would go out abroad and say Filipino.
Yeah, Filipinos
I
are
think that was the
extremely
first thing.
proud.
And not a small part of that was OPM, was the
Original Pinoy music.
Pinoy
Music.
music. Because it's the culture. You learn about, this is what it means to be a Pinoy. This is what it means to be Filipino. And that happened during his time. And if you ask me, despite all of the successes that he had, built all the roads, the schools, the educational system, the medical, that's all wonderful and something that we should continue to. It's that sense of nationhood. And we were united. We were united as one. We were all working in the same direction, And we've lost that a little bit. And that's what I would like to, that's how I would introduce myself. I would like to restore that. Nasa ugali naman ng Pilipino na matulungin eh. Nasa ugali.
He'd like to reinstate nationhood.
Nasa ugali natin yung bayanihan. Kailangan gisingin lang ulit eh. Kailangan magtulungan ulit tayo. Medyo nakikita natin during the pandemic, random acts of kindness.
Bayanihan.
And just
tulungan.
because Pinoys are just great. I mean, Pinoys are the best.
They are.
They're the kindest, most
Absolutely.
gracious, most masipag, most resourceful.
Agreed.
You never give up. You know? Pag masyado nang mahira, gagawa ng joke. Saan ko naman nakakita ng gano'n? Hirap na nagpapatawa pa.
Very resilient.
Tough. We're tough, not in the arrogant or aggressive way. We're tough in a very gentle Asian way.
True. It's very true.
Which is for me the most remarkable quality that Filipinos.
It's so gentle sometimes that you don't even notice it at first. It's when you get to know Filipinos that you realize that Filipinos are everything that he mentioned, you know?
We're the best.
Hey, we're the best.
You can't bring them anywhere, ask them to do anything, basta i-backupan mo, basta you support them, they'll do good. You cannot put a Pinoy down.
Yan.
They won't stop. They won't stop. Especially for the family.
So that's the best quality of a Pinoy. If I were to ask you naman po, what's your best quality?
My best quality, it's against my nature too.
But how are you po as a husband? How will you describe yourself as a husband?
As a
Why did she interrupt him?
parent, as a husband, I think I'm pretty typical.
I gotta go back to see. All right, so he's got 3 boys. Wow.
Describe yourself
Me?
as a husband.
As a parent, as a husband, I think I'm pretty typical. That I mean, you're just trying to do your best. You're always trying to do your best. Of course, you never succeed. You don't succeed every time, but that's it. That's all you can do. That's a good question. How do I describe myself as a husband? I'm now trying to compare myself with friends of mine. I think at this stage in our family's life, it's really to be close to the family, as close to the family as you can. So even if you're working for something much bigger than just your family, that still remains the focus of your life. I'm many of the time I could retire and just give back. What will my kids think? Di ba? Tinamad na yung tatay namin, ayaw na eh.
Di ba?
Speaking of tired, what are you tired hearing about?
Lies. I'm really tired of hearing lies that have already been disproven. Not necessarily about my family, about me. Some people have the idea that if you repeat a lie often enough, it becomes the truth. And so they keep repeating things. It's just tiresome. Pero yet, like I said, may pagkamanhid na rin ako. Kasi alam ko naman, ganyan naman talaga eh. Kung ayaw mong kini-criticize ka, huwag ka
Well, this video might change people's perspective on him and his family. Because, Toni Gonzaga's YouTube channel is very successful.
Go into public life. When people are spouting lies, I always tell myself, don't worry about it. You have the advantage. You know the truth. So I take refuge in that.
And your truth is?
And the truth is not what you're saying. It's entirely something else. Just think of the things that were being said in '86. February, March, April. All the things that sinasabi, nakadiscover kami ng ganito, ng ganyan. All of them have been proven as lies. Pero sige pa rin. Sige pa rin sila. Oh, sige, kung talagang yun ang gusto niyo sayangin niyo yung buhay niyo dyan, di sige, that's your business. Tama si Taylor Swift, haters gonna hate. Right?
Oh my God.
That's what they are.
He's actually quoting Taylor Swift. Well, that is just crazy. Haters gonna hate, but that's true. That's true.
Do is hate.
So what do you focus on now po?
Work. I guess that's where we're headed.
Back to work.
What else are you going to do? The best thing that you can do is to help other people.
There you go. He stole the words out of my mouth. That's exactly what I was gonna say. The best thing you can do is to be of service to other people. And you know, work is usually that. So, you know, I mean, what I do, you know, giving you on a daily basis my videos, I see it as, you know, like it helps you in a way, you know, it gives you, you know, it's your stress reliever. A lot of you tell me that my videos are your stress reliever. You know, it's your entertainment, your daily entertainment. So there you go. I do my part just like you guys do your part.
Is to help many other people, as many people as you can. And what could be better than that?
Yeah. It's
I can't
very
think
rewarding.
of anything that could be better than that.
Yeah. Last words of Toni. Come on. Happy birthday, Bongbong Marcos. Hey, happy birthday. No last words. Come on. Usually Toni Gonzaga at the end of her interviews has like some last wisdomous words or something like that. This was very interesting. Okay, so when I read the title and I saw Bongbong Marcos, so my first instinct was like, Marcos Gold. You know, I wasn't very positive about this, you know. Then we read together the description, you know, of Bongbong Marcos, Fernandez Marcos, and you know, they mentioned the dictatorship of his father, so that's also not very positive. But then watching the interview kind of changed my, you know, perspective on Bongbong Marcos and a little bit about his father. I need a lot more insight on what his father did and other perspectives, because clearly here we only have the perspective of his son, so you know. But it was still very interesting. I got emotional, I have to admit, when he started talking about the last moments with his dad. It really hit me hard. I don't know if you guys could see it, but I was trying to hold it together. It was tough. But it was a wonderful interview, and I learned something new about one of your presidents and his son, his family, and again, Toni Gonzaga. Bravo, bravo. Very good questions. I mean, even Bongbong noticed your questions, you know, your fantastic questions, so that's great. Now it is your turn to tell me in the comment section below your thoughts on this interview. Maraming salamat po. Thank you so much for joining me. You guys are the best. Take care of yourselves. Have a great day. Stay safe. And of course, I will catch you guys in the next video. Peace. Thank you for watching. Subscribe here and please like the video to show your support and appreciation for my work, and turn on the notification bell to be poked for future content. Yeah.